Greetings, this is Pamela Rice, and this is Hard News Vegan. Welcome! Today is May 26, 2021, and hey, what's going on in the world today? Well, lots of stuff, but at the crux of it all, I believe, it is the legacy of none other than St. Ignatius of Loyola, who was alive, no less, 500 years ago. Yes, 500 years. And aside from Ignatius, another famous figure continues to have a great influence from this long ago time, and that is Niccolo Machiavelli, which you have heard of. This is my theory. It's a bit of an amalgamation, eclectically filtered through my musty brain. A thesis I hold, gleaned from a motley bunch of people whose opinions I perused here and there over a long period of time. So let's get into it. St. Ignatius of Loyola, in the 16th century, founded the Jesuit order, also known as the Society of Jesus. The Jesuits were a creation made specifically in response to the Protestant Reformation that had recently exploded on the scene. Thank you, by the way, Johannes Gutenberg, whose revolutionary printing press served to disseminate Protestant ideas. The Jesuits were at the core of what is often referred to as the Counter-Reformation. The Jesuits were, /are, a military order that promotes the Pope of Rome. It does this to the death, if that be required, but mostly it achieves all of its goals by deception and stealth and ruthlessness and infiltration and intrigue and, oh yeah, violence. Martin Luther, legend holds, nailed 95 theses to the door of the Castle Church in Wittenberg, Germany, on October 31, 1517, an act commemorated today as Reformation Day. With this action, historians have declared the Protestant Reformation had its impetus. Theses, ideas, arguments, notions, thoughts, these were the salvos of Martin Luther. At the time, he had no intention of creating a schism in the Catholic Church. He was a reformer. He wanted to begin a dialogue to make things better. If you disagree with any of his ideas, arguments, notions, or thoughts, put forth your own theses. But back then, Luther's point of view was essentially airtight. There was no argument. An argument would have been a fool's errand. To counter Luther back then, one had only one choice, and your tool for the job must surely be tactics that embody the notion of the end justifies the means. You might need a military strategy, not an essay to counter Luther's arguments. Honor, fair fight? Nah. Jesuits, with their leader, St. Ignatius, then and still today, operate by raw, unrelenting yet patient, power-grabbing strategies, employing coercion, violence, i.e. terrorism, and force, if need be. This was a shady group, the Jesuits, to say the least, and their members today walk among us. Hey, you're talking about those Jesuits. Aren't they the people who have schools and missionary networks all over the world? Aren't they involved with charity? Don't they do, quote-unquote, good works? Well, there is much more than what meets the eye, indeed, when it comes to the Jesuits, by definition. First, who's talking about the Jesuits these days? No one. And those Jesuits like it that way. Niccolo Machiavelli and St. Ignatius of Loyola were contemporaries during the Renaissance in Italy. Machiavelli, just over 2 decades older. You know, I get them mixed up. their philosophies, their life stories, so similar. Surely St. Ignatius read Machiavelli's book, The Prince, published in 1532, which was a shocking treatise in the form of a brutally practical handbook for monarchs or heads of state. If rebellion, betrayal, treason, insurrection, or invasion presented themselves, overwhelming force must be the response. That's the rules. Well, unless stealth, walk softly but carry a big stick, works better. Machiavelli and St. Ignatius were probably in Italy at the same time. I can't believe they never even met. Machiavellianism is actually no relic of the past. It is alive and well in the world around us. Its lessons well honed and practiced, not just by Jesuits, but secret societies everywhere. The CIA, for example. Interestingly, both the CIA and the Jesuits are each informally known as the company. Look it up. What are the odds? World leaders have adhered to Machiavellian principles before Machiavelli even lived. I think we know this. After these principles were codified in Machiavelli's book, again in 1532, The Prince, world leaders kept his book close at hand and read it and reread it. We know this. It is public history. Today, we also have Sun Tzu's The Art of War. Tacticians' handbooks, they all are. This is what they are. So while you normies are busy buying groceries, looking out after your career, keeping a budget, renovating your house or apartment, world leaders are busy perfecting their war games against adversaries in faraway realms and also close up and intimate in order to stay atop the proverbial big hill. It should be noted that the Jesuits were well known by America's founding fathers. Back then, they loomed large for them. Our founding fathers knew the threat that the Jesuits posed. They wrote about them. They wrote to each other about them. So what's happening now? Let's talk about the shadowy groups in operation these days that adhere to the Jesuit model. It is my belief that the issues of the 16th century, the Reformation versus the Counter-Reformation, are in fact alive and well today, and as important as they were back then, 5 centuries ago. You wouldn't know it. It's not apparent. Nobody talks about it. Again, those Jesuits like it that way. Strangely, Protestants today seem to be oblivious and unconcerned with what they may think are anachronistic issues of Protestant versus Catholic. I'd say at their peril. They've moved on. By the way, if review is needed, perhaps some people are not even aware that Catholics and Protestants were killing each other wantonly way back when, some time long ago. The 30 Years' War was truly horrendous. I suggest folks look that up. The 30 Years' War. Well, the Catholics, on the contrary, these days are not past the issues of Protestant versus Catholic. Not at all. Not yet, despite the fact that they are the first to say they desire ecumenicalism. A little clue right there on how the Jesuits achieve their goals, habitually engaging in lies right to your face, particularly in the official pronouncements. They basically say the opposite of what is, in fact, true. Period. Catholics are today still trying to annihilate the Protestants. Not the everyday normie Catholics, but definitely the higher-ups in the organization. Roman Catholics are still trying to establish temporal power of the Pope, however slowly and incrementally. That is their ultimate pressing goal, and they're doing a good job of it, by stealth, always by stealth. The hallmark strategy of the Jesuits. So, who else may use Machiavellian/Jesuit tactics in today's world? Well, the Democrats, of course. This is what I want to get to here. And the country, the USA, not to mention the Republicans in Congress, are in disbelief at what's being flung at them these days. We have a new level of chaos and irrationality going on around us. People are beside themselves. The Democrats' brand is a strange variety of Machiavellianism, I have to say, that these days comes straight out of a guy named Saul Alinsky. Write it down. A guy who wrote another handbook, the name of which, Rules for Radicals. Look it up, read it. Alinsky himself compared his famous book to The Prince by Machiavelli, the book we're talking about here, no less. The difference, he told us, is that the ruthless tactics described in The Prince, Alinsky writes about, are to be employed not by monarchs and heads of state, but by the rabble, the hoi polloi, the little guys, the oppressed. Oh, of course, those victims of white supremacism, sexism, transphobia. The list goes on. What do we have these days? Defined from above, for sure. First of all, we now have those designated as lowest echelons of society, that is, criminals, illegal immigrants, transsexuals, black and brown people, somehow lapping up largesse from the rest of us. Reparations in action. I think they've been in action for many decades already. Reverse discrimination. Merit can have no place in our world anymore, according to the Democrats. We don't want equality of opportunity, a Martin Luther King proposal. We need equity in outcome. Everyone must have equal everything, even if that means descending to the lowest common denominator on what you can possess. Even if that means a fast race to the bottom, the worst, not the best of everything, the worst. If you're oppressed by white people, yes, white people, white males in particular, as defined by Democrats, you get a spot at the head of the line because you are, quote unquote, marginalized. If you commit a crime, no bail for you, no sentence. You are let go and let go and let go to commit crime after crime after crime. If you are black, you get checks in the mail for you and your kids, and you didn't even ask for it. If you entered the U.S. unlawfully over the Rio Grande and are now loose in the interior of our nation, just a few steps and you'll be receiving housing, medical care, schooling, and just plain cash, along with citizenship pronto. Thank you, Joe Biden, who is, by the way, a Roman Catholic, working for the Pope for sure. Bleeding heart liberals, you need to stop with the major annoying do-goodery. I put those do-goodery in air quotes. It's not do-goodery, Mr. Democrat. It's do-baddery, B-A-D-E-R-I-E. You, as you champion these liberal-defined needy people who aren't any more needy than a lot of American-born citizens. Meanwhile, you're mucking up the economy, printing trillions of dollars to pay for all this. Hello, hyperinflation. That's a whole other video. Ultimately, you're canceling tax-paying, hard-working Americans, real citizens. You're canceling their vote with the illegals' votes that are bound to vote for free stuff liberals, the dumb Democrats. You're canceling business owners who had their shops burned down by BLM and Antifa, those, peaceful protesters over the past year. You know, it's funny. I used to be a lunatic liberal. I have to confess. I was raised as a left-leaning Democrat, also as an atheist. So I've been there. From the 1970s through the 1990s, I voted strictly for Democrats, solid, as if I were an automaton. I even campaigned for John Kerry when he ran against George W. for president. Hell, I think I even licked envelopes for Gene McCarthy. You young people may need to look him up. Anyway, not no more, folks. Now I'm a conservative. I am. I'm no longer a liberal. I wrote off the Democrats in the early 2000s when they voted over and over for massive emergency appropriations for that horrible Gulf War at the time, a war that was the result of the mysterious events of September 11, 2001. That's another video. Fast forward, 2020, the Rona-19 pandemic, air quotes, it was not a pandemic, and the presidential election that placed a demented man in the Oval Office. Both of these are part and parcel of the same black op event. Thank you, mainstream media. Fiat. They declared all of these things by fiat, folks. Repeat, Rona-19, pandemic, 2020 election. The same evil operation. They happened about the same time. Both were defined by data. For the Rona-19, cases, hospitalizations, and deaths. For the 2020 election, fraudulent vote counts. Data, numbers, broadcast over the propaganda airwaves in cahoots with the Democrats. Critical and essential for both hoaxes, COVID and election. Two hoaxes. And everyone knows it's lies, damn lies, and data. That's what we've had for the last 7 months. Lies, damn lies, and data. Everything you see in politics today, you see the issue of Protestant versus Catholic in play, 100% driven by the Democrats who take a pro-Catholic side. Let me explain. Just like the Catholics who hate the independence, self-reliance, and work ethic of the Protestants, can't stand it, and haven't for centuries, and want to kill these qualities as well as the people who hold them, the Democrats also want to suppress individualism, to favor dependence, and ultimately a modern form of serfdom. It's all about control, people. The Democrats want dumb, slavish, slovenly, worshiping dorks they can fool into re-electing them. The Jesuits want dumb, slavish, slovenly, worshipping dorks they can fool into favoring temporal power in the hands of the Pope. This might be a lot to take in all at once, I admit, people. Anyone listening to this? Okay. Who are these Jesuits? Who was St. Ignatius of Loyola? First, Ignatius was born into a middle-class home. Later, he chose the life of a soldier. After rising in the ranks to commander, his military career was suddenly cut short by a cannonball to the leg. After an excruciating recovery, bedridden for a long period, Ignatius had to reinvent himself. First, he became a mendicant, a religious beggar, traipsing around Europe and the Middle East. Meanwhile, his religious vehemence became stronger and stronger, whereas ultimately he devised a specific method of prayer that involved deprivation and guilt-assuaging self-harm, and lo and behold, it became popular. The ritual morphed into a full-fledged military-inspired religious order, the military part, thank you, St. Ignatius, today known, as I've been mentioning, the Jesuits or the Society of Jesus, an order that also, as I've mentioned, defined its true goal as stopping the spread of the Protestant Reformation. In pursuit of Pope advocacy, the Jesuits adopted mercenary tactics to the extreme, which has led to the Jesuit order being expelled from scores of countries around the world over the centuries, sometimes multiple times. Okay, I think we've all had enough now. This post is just a brief introduction and outline of what I want to talk about in this vlog. I want to be dwelling on the idiotic antics of the Democrats, for sure inspired, remember, by Saul Alinsky. Write it down, read his book, Rules for Radicals. I want to focus on historical underpinnings. That is going to be a big part of this vlog, possibly. I mean, really history, talking about the Greeks and the Sumerians and all kind of stuff like that. Why is it that our government seems to be so often, act illogically and against the common interests? These are questions I want to explore. Current examples today include defunding the police, instituting an open borders policy, printing trillions of dollars to hand out willy-nilly to Democrat favorites, and championing BLM and Antifa, riot-happy Marxist organizations. How could the Dems have won the 2020 presidency? How did the country become convinced we need to shut down the economy for an illness that could hardly have been called a pandemic? This and more. Stay tuned, folks. So, going to cut it short. But first, a bit of the good stuff. That which I did not write. At this point, I'm going to end with an extraordinary tract, an oath, no less. And I'm going to read it. What is it? It is the oath every graduating Jesuit must recite and adhere to for the rest of his life. It is not for the faint of heart. So shut this off if you don't like guts and gore. There's a little bit of that. So are you ready, folks? Here goes. This is an oath, remember. I, then you fill in the blank, Jesuit graduate's name, now in the presence of Almighty God, the Blessed Virgin Mary, the Blessed St. John the Baptist, the Holy Apostles, St. Peter and St. Paul, and all the saints, sacred host of heaven, and to you, my ghostly father, the Superior General of the Society of Jesus, founded by St. Ignatius of Loyola in the pontification of Paul III, and continued to the present, do by the womb of the Virgin, the matrix of God and the rod of Jesus Christ, declare and swear that His Holiness, the Pope, is Christ vice-regent, and is the true and only head of the Catholic or Universal Church throughout the earth, and that by the virtue of the keys of binding and loosing given to His Holiness by my Savior Jesus Christ, He hath power to dispose heretical kings, princes, states, commonwealths, and governments, and they may be safely destroyed. Aside, people, this is why the Jesuits were expelled from many countries. They were undermining legitimate leaders and governments. Okay. Continuing. Therefore, to the utmost of my power, I will defend this doctrine and His Holiness's right and custom against all usurpers of the heretical or Protestant authority whatever, especially the Lutheran Church of Germany, Holland, Denmark, Sweden, and Norway, and the now pretended authority and churches of England and Scotland, and the branches of same now established in Ireland and on the continent of America and elsewhere, and all adherents in regard that they may be usurped and heretical, opposing the Sacred Mother Church of Rome. I do now denounce and disown any allegiance as due to any heretical king, prince or state, named Protestant or liberal, or obedience to any of their laws, magistrates, or officers. I do further declare the doctrine of the Church of England and Scotland of the Calvinists, Huguenots, and others of the same, of Protestant or Masons, to be damnable, and they themselves to be damned, who will not forsake the same. I do further declare that I will help, assist, and advise all or any of His Holiness's agents in any place where I should be in Switzerland, Germany, Holland, Ireland, or America, or in any other kingdom or territory I shall come to, and I do my utmost to extirpate the heretical Protestant or Masonic doctrines, and to destroy all their pretended powers, legal or otherwise. I do further promise and declare that, notwithstanding, I am dispensed with to assume any religion heretical for the propagation of the Mother Church's interest. So I want to say as an aside, this is where stealth comes in, that where a Roman Catholic Jesuit may assume being a Protestant to wiggle their way in behind the scenes, a fifth column of sorts. I am dispensed with to assume any religion heretical for the propagation of the Mother Church's interest, to keep secret and private all her agents' counsel from time to time as they entrust me, and not to divulge, directly or indirectly, by word, writing, or circumstance whatever, but to execute all that should be proposed, given in charge, or discovered unto me by you, my ghostly father, or any of this sacred order. I do further promise and declare that I will have no opinion or will of my own, or any mental reservation whatsoever, even as a corpse or cadaver, but will unhesitatingly obey each and every command that I may receive from my superiors in the militia of the Pope and of Jesus Christ, that I will go to any part of the world whatsoever I may be sent, to the frozen regions north, jungles of India, to the centers of civilization of Europe, or to the wild haunts of the barbarous savages of America, without murmuring or repining, and will be submissive in all things whatsoever is communicated to me. I do further promise and declare that I will, when opportunity presents, make and wage relentless war, secretively and openly, against all heretics, Protestants, and Masons, as I am directed to do, to extirpate them from the face of the whole earth, and that I will spare neither age, sex, nor condition, that will hang, burn, waste, boil, flay, strangle, and bury alive these infamous heretics, rip up the stomachs and wombs of their women, and crush the infants' heads against the walls in order to annihilate their execrable race. Execrable means horrible. That when the same cannot be done openly, I will secretly use the poisonous cup, the strangulation cord, the steel of the poignard, or the leaden bullet, regardless of the honor, rank, dignity, or authority of the persons, whatever may be their condition in life, either public or private, as I at any time may be directed so to do by any agents of the Pope or superior of the Brotherhood of the Holy Father of the Society of Jesus, in confirmation of which I hereby dedicate my life, soul, and all corporal powers, and with the dagger which I now receive, I will subscribe my name written in my blood in testimony thereof, and should I prove false or weaken in my determination, may my brethren and fellow soldiers of the militia of the Pope, cut off my hands and feet, and my throat from ear to ear, my belly be opened, and sulfur burned therein, with all the punishment that can be inflicted upon me on earth, and my soul shall be tortured by demons in eternal hell forever. That I will, in voting, always vote for a Knight of Columbus in preference to a Protestant, especially a Mason, and that I will leave my party to do so. That if two Catholics are on the ticket, I will satisfy myself which is the better supporter of Mother Church, and vote accordingly. That I will deal with or employ a Protestant if in my power to deal with or employ a Catholic. That I will place Catholic girls in Protestant families, that a weekly report may be made of the inner movements of the heretics. That I will provide myself with arms and ammunition, that I may be in readiness when the word is passed, or I am commanded to defend the Church, either as an individual or the militia of the Pope. All of which I, a Jesuit graduate by name, do swear by the Blessed Trinity and Blessed Sacrament, which I am now to receive, to perform, and on part to keep this my oath. In testimony hereof, I take this most holy and blessed sacrament of the Eucharist, and witness the same further, with my name written with the point of this dagger dipped in my own blood, and seal in the face of this holy sacrament. Okay, that's it, guys. When you live by the notion of the end justifies the means, and that is this Jesuit order. If you're planning a military campaign, you want to win at all costs. You will consider any advantage, any tactic, any strategy, no matter how dastardly. For example, when the bow and arrow came onto the battlefield, it was sort of like, well, the Spartans, for example, thought that it was a cheap shot because the Spartans, they used spears at close range, hand-to-hand combat. They say people who killed from afar, as one would with a bow and arrow, to be unfair. Let's say you drop napalm from an airplane. That's kind of unfair. For anyone below, it's not a fair fight. Ignatius saw fighting the Protestant Reformation in the context of a military campaign where collegial cooperation were the farthest things from his mind. And anyway, again, he didn't have an argument to go up against Luther in any case. You pursue by every means possible. The Jesuits have been extremely successful. First, they operate under a veil of virtue, educational institutions. They use the tactics of the Hospitallers, the Knights Templar, or the Knights of Columbus, all of whom provided a service to do genuine charitable work. Next, Jesuit recruits, these guys who take this oath, in disparate countries all over the world, are taken from the upper echelons, the elite classes. The people taking these oaths were, upper-class individuals. Individuals who speak the language in the country. Many different countries, and could fit in at the top tiers of society. The object is always to not to stand out, not to create suspicion, to become the gray man. The immediate goal is to get cozy with the leaders of the government in these many various countries where the Jesuits have operations. So cozy that the Jesuit priest may even be called upon as a confessor to the top guy in the nation. Wow, it's almost like having a bug in the bunker of your adversary in a military campaign, is it not? On the other hand, You know intimately what makes this leader tick. In particular, what is his Achilles heel? What is the secret weakness you can snare him on? And how can you get on the advantage? To ultimately, the ultimate goal, guys, is for Catholics to take down the Protestants. Let me just say, I believe it's true. Why do you think we have people from South America and Mexico and Central America being allowed to stream into the United States of America? It's to dilute the population of the United States, which is essentially a Protestant nation, right? I think Catholics are only 20% now. I don't know if that's true anymore, but anyway, food for thought, folks. Thank you for listening. This is Pamela Rice. This is Hard News Vegan. It is May 26, 2021.